Here in Nigeria, the army says a group of military officers who were arrested last year were plotting a coup, it turns out. If found guilty, they could face the death penalty. Now, at the time of their arrest, the military dismissed rumors of an attempted coup. Nigeria, of course, has a complex, rather complicated history of military involvement in politics, with multiple coups between 1966 and 1993, which, as you can imagine, has made allegations of coup plotting highly sensitive.
On October 4, 2025, the Defense Headquarters, through its former Director of Defense Information, Brigadier General Tukur Gusau, announced the arrest of...
Sorry, that jumped the gun a bit. Well, for more on this, let's speak now to Arise Politics editor and director of News, Sumner Sambo. Good to see you, Sumner. Now, we know that the military authorities dismissed suggestions of a coup at the time. Why do you think they're saying now that these officers were involved in a coup?
Well, because their own investigations are over, and they claim to have traces of involvement in the coup, and it's left to be proven, though these are all allegations until a competent court of law actually justifies all of these assertions.
In their case, a military tribunal.
Yes. No, I mean, it mustn't really be, because, I mean, if you look at the Armed Forces Act, there's a debate whether the Armed Forces Act actually can try treasonable cases or not. What the lawyers are saying, as civil lawyers are saying, is that it's only a federal high court or maybe a state high court that can try anything that has to do with treasonable felony. But when it has to do with the issues of discipline and indiscipline within the armed forces, yes, the Armed Forces Act has that capacity to take care of that. This is not a disciplinary issue. This is a treasonable act against the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because it's not the Armed Forces Act that they wanted to dethrone. It is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that they wanted to dethrone. And if that had happened, maybe they would have set aside the Constitution, and maybe you and I may not even be here. If there's a martial decree.
That means that if they go through the normal court system, they'd have an automatic right of appeal as well.
Yeah, I mean, appeal going up until the Supreme Court and all of that. And so that will happen. Yeah, under the military rule, it would have, sufficed for the military tribunal or military judicial panel to go ahead and do whatever they need to. But let's even go back and look at the previous cases. I mean, some of them got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court actually, dispensed justice. Some of the people who were previously accused were set free and all of that by the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. And so whatever that's been done will eventually have to have an appeal, because, I mean, if you sentence someone to death, you have the capacity to do that. There should be some process to appeal.
Indeed. So basically 16 soldiers indicted for plotting to overthrow the government. But surely, I mean, 16 soldiers wouldn't be able to overthrow the Nigerian government, would they? Or are they simply accused of plotting to overthrow the government?
Well, from what we can glimpse from all that the military has been saying, including the presidency earlier denying and saying that, they should allow the military to work, from the military's rhetoric right now, it's an attempted coup.
Right.
And then it wasn't, undertaken. For us to now call it a foil coup. So it was
they
still
foiled
being
it before
and all of that.
Right.
So it was something that was still in the works, and that's why you see the Brigadier General who was called actually got to know about it, and according to them, he refused to alert much more higher authorities. So the rest is from captain way up to that Brigadier General. So we still await the details, because whatever we're seeing and hearing, including from the actors and non-state actors, it's all speculative.
Indeed. But as we await those details, you're a very well-respected politics editor in this country. What might have led anyone to think of carrying out a coup in Nigeria? Because, I mean, the idea of a military takeover in this country is quite unpopular. Even though sections of the country appear to be unhappy about the way this country is run, which they say has impoverished the many while the few are living large. But generally speaking, Nigerians oppose military takeovers.
Yeah, a whole lot of people wouldn't want to get back to military rule. But when you see politicians complaining about the system based on what citizens are also speaking with politicians, there's a tendency for politicians to romance people who, are disaffected with what's going on within the military itself to want to, bring such things. I mean, previous coups that happened in the country, that's what has always happened. I mean, if you listen to, the coup leaders, coup masters like General Ibrahim Babangida in his book, he stated clearly, it's the anger of the populace then brought in place through back-end channels by politicians asking them to overthrow the governments. And so that's what happened. 1966, yeah, it may have been a mistake, young people trying to come over, to take over, but when it now got to, the likes of the coups against Murtala Mohammed, and then, of course, the coups that then went ahead against Shagari, and then Gowon, and then, of course, you have the coups against Babangida himself, down to Abacha. This has always been the underlying factor, the fragility of the state, and the thinking that leaving it to the politicians alone can actually collapse the state. And so the military, with some elements within them that are over-patriotic, think that they owe the state the last option to actually be the one to save the state from suicide that's been undertaken by politicians in government. But in this instance, what we are hearing is that some of these people actually had issues with promotions in the army, and some of them actually had complaints about how the war against insecurity, insurgency, and all of that is being undertaken. Are those things enough to actually dethrone a legally elected government? Well, I mean, they are not enough, and they can never be any reason for you to do that, because the military, especially within the context of Nigerian politics, we think it's already gone to the back door. But let's be careful so that the government in power does not think too comfortable that it cannot happen, because we've seen that happening. I mean, we had to help Benin Republic to fall their own coup, and then we've seen what's happening around. There's the fragility of democracy within the ECOWAS sub-region. And why is that happening? Because of poor governance. And then within Africa itself, look at what Museveni what happened in Uganda, with Museveni right, taking 7th term, and then look at Cameroon too, in Central Africa, Paul Biya and all of that. So people are saying, why only these people? And then if democracy is not practiced according to the rule book, there's constant breakdown of rule of law. Politicians don't respect the law books, and then there's increase in poverty. I mean, you have all of this. But a coup attempt in itself is a very dangerous game. And under this Fourth Republic that we've been, I mean, there was a coup attempt in 2004. Obasanjo himself had to say, his presidency had to announce that there was something like that. What did he do? He eventually, removed lots of people, because knowing fully well that if he had gone ahead to do this court-martial or the judicial military plan, it may affect the politics of it. So that's why the APC government, who has to be very cautious, the government has to have its facts very, very much in place, so that once they get to court, they don't lose out. Because if they do, then it will be looked as political witch hunt. Because we hear that majority of these coup plotters, for now, alleged coup plotters, are majorly from the north. So can the APC government afford that? But then, let's not play politics with very important issues like this. Because if they were northerners trying to attempt to dethrone a government in power, then it will say so much whether some politicians are not speaking to them. But in all, what we will say right now is that a coup is something that should be taken very serious, because if you look at what happened, previous ones, I mean, people were actually executed. Look at 1985, the likes of Mama Mvasa, 13 of them, 10 of them were executed. And then look at the Abacha coup in 1995, there was one, the likes of Oladipo Dia, even Obasanjo and all of that. And then there was another in 1997. I mean, that's the one that Oladipo Dia was involved. So after that, we said goodbye to all of it. Obasanjo came, he made a swift purge of all the generals that could have, caused a problem. Now, Nigerians must rise up and protect even the government in power. Right. We may not love the government, but we must love our country, not to give away our democracy to people that nobody knows about. Indeed. I mean, who are these people who want to dethrone a legally elected government? So if this had happened, it would take us back several years. But it should be done in such a way that the onus is on the government to provide the facts
Right.
that this
Okay.
is it, and there's no attempt to actually witch hunt some people. And then the military must continue to subject itself to civilian authority,
Right.
because they are better off, Charles, under a civilian government than a
Indeed.
military government.
Sumner, thank you very much indeed. Sumner Sambo is Arise Politics editor and director of News.